Hello again and welcome. My name is Bins and here we are in a third video on Shapes.io, a factory-style game that I think I must admit I have become a bit addicted to. The units that you can build in this game are so simple. Extract a shape, place it on a conveyor, move it into the hub. Optionally, paint it, rotate it. The mechanics of the individual units are super easy to understand, but the scalability of it all is just humongous. It's ridiculous. Gradually figuring out how you can combine these super basic individual units to create what in the end can become insane factories throws you down a rabbit hole that I've yet to see the bottom of. And also I want to give a shout out to Pepsin, which is the composer of the soothing and chill background music in this game. Apart from the game itself being well built, the music, as far as I'm concerned, definitely contributes a ton to how time flies by while playing this game for hours on end. Now, this is not a sponsored video, no one asked me to say this, but I'm just saying it because that's how I feel. The game costs only a few bucks on Steam, and if this video whets your interest at all, consider throwing a few bucks the developer's way to support him, and in return, you'll get hours and hours of relaxing and extremely enjoyable gameplay. Now, I recall that I ended my previous video stating that I probably wouldn't do another video about Shapes.io. When I wrapped up that video, I felt like I had gotten everything out of it that I wanted. But something keeps drawing me back, and I guess here we are, right? So again, I'm tempted to say that this will be my last video about Shapes.io, but I better refrain from doing so. We'll see. Alright? Now, before we get into looking at the specifics of my third machine, I would like to address something that might rub a few viewers the wrong way. I don't want to offend anyone, so I'll try to tread lightly, but here's what happened. On my previous videos, I got some comments about how all of this could be done a lot quicker and that I definitely should check out the Discord channel because there were MAMs out there that could produce items and deliver them to the hub in as little as 20 to 30 seconds. And I immediately felt despair creeping up on me because I suddenly saw myself as an infant that felt accomplished and proud of his bucket-shaped yee-high sandcastle, while others were out there building real-life sand replicas of the Taj Mahal or something, and I'd just been completely and utterly oblivious to what others had achieved while I had just been muddling along minding my own business. So I decided to investigate, and I discovered that in fact, it's true. There are machines out there that can automatically create and deliver the requested shapes to the hub in about 20 seconds. One Discord user was even so friendly to share their save game with me so that I could see it for myself. And while the claim holds up, there is a big but, and I cannot lie. The machine made use of an item spawner building. Let's see. Here's what it looks like. It's a one-cell building to which you can connect a wire, and then it will immediately start outputting a full belt of whatever signal you put on the wire. Fun fact, you can even feed it a Boolean signal and you will have ones and zeros running across your belts. Now, I assume that this unit has been created mainly for test purposes by the developers, right? In order to have some shape or color immediately at hand, and while the existence of the unit in itself doesn't bother me one bit if that's what it's used for, I am slightly annoyed by those who use this item in their Make Anything machine and then proclaim how fast it is. Because once you go that route, once you break the barrier of using an item spawner, which by the way isn't even a unit you can unlock in the regular game, you defeat the entire purpose of building an automated factory in the first place. If we're allowed to use the item spawner, then I will build you an MAM that can level up in 5 seconds rather than 20. You know, here it is. Do you understand what I'm getting at? Now, let it be clear that I don't want to discredit the machines that these people have built. The things I've seen did look well thought out and definitely have their merit, and maybe these people themselves didn't even hide the fact that they use item spawners in their machines. I don't know, but that little detail seems to have gotten lost on its way to the comment section of my previous videos. So here's what those comments felt like to me. Imagine being a marathon runner for which the world record lies around 2 hours, right? Now someone walks up to you and goes, "You have to check out John Doe. He can do the same distance in less than 1 hour." So in disbelief, you reach out to John Doe, ask him if it's true, and in the friendliest of manners he goes, "Sure, no biggie, let me show you," and then proceeds to hop on a bicycle and blast off. Now, again, I'm not saying that John's performance is entirely without merit. He may be fast on a bike, but I hope you understand that from the marathon runner's perspective, you would feel a little bit cheated. Furthermore, the 20-second machine I was shown was built inside a save game where all upgrades were at tier 78, about 50 billion blueprints on stock, and I'm not quite sure whether all of this was achieved organically. In my game, I am now at tier 36 for all my units, and what I did to get there was literally let the game run for a few days. I'd get up in the morning, fire up my game, and then leave for work, letting the hub collect blueprint shapes, the purple star thingy shapes, the logo shapes, and the rocket shapes all day long. I repeated this quite a few number of days, and since the number of shapes required to tier up keep increasing, I have no idea how long it would take to reach tier 78, as well as 50 billion blueprints in a natural way. So the bottom line is this: if you would like to drop a comment on this video on a machine you've built or have seen that's faster than mine, then please mention whether it uses item spawners or not, because if it does, I will gladly look at it and admire nifty mechanics or sweet logic that's been built in, but I will automatically disregard any claims that have to do with the speed of the machine in question. Alright? Even if you use the item spawner only to create gray shapes and primary colors, then still the fact that each spawner only takes up one cell on your map is tremendously beneficial to your factory, and I will disregard your speed claims. Take the windmill shape for example. If you have an item spawner to produce a plain, uncolored windmill shape, a full windmill isn't found anywhere on the map, and many players watching this will know how big of a factory you already need to build in order to create one. And should you replace the item spawners in your Make Anything machine with organically placed extractors, shape cutters, stackers, and whatnot to create, for example, the windmill shapes, or also the secondary color and white paints that feed your Make Anything machine, as well as the conveyor belts you'll need to run to get from point A to B, then firstly, the most efficient designs, in parentheses, might suddenly become a real struggle for space. And secondly, by needing to build all these additional buildings that the item spawner replaces, you might also run into the FPS issue that I lengthily discussed in my previous video. So, let's reiterate the purpose. My Make Anything machine is located in a regular vanilla Shapes.io standalone game started from scratch. I went through all 26 initial levels and tiered up without cheating, which, as I said, took me about a full week of doing nothing and letting the hub just collect the sheer amounts of shapes required for the next upgrade. So if you would like to compare my machines to others, I must insist that we're all on the same playing field. Alright? Alright. I've definitely rambled on long enough now. I apologize, but felt it was important to address this topic. But with this being said, let's now look at my third automated factory, shall we? So here it is. In the grand scheme of things, I took a let's say radically different route, and I decided to use the quad painter, excuse me, which I discovered also receives a lot of flack for being inefficient. In my previous machines, if you recall, I also did not use the quad stacker because I felt it was too complicated because, sorry, the quad painter, and not the quad stack, the quad painter. Because I felt it was too complicated. It is the only painter type that requires wiring. And I decided to go with the double painter in my last design. However, all in all, if you put the ratios next to each other, the quad painter is actually faster than the double painter or the regular single painter. So I wanted to examine what the possibilities were, and well, I made up a design that uses the quad painter. I am pretty proud of it, and as far as my testing went, it is actually a bit faster than my previous machine was. So let's look at it. Now, a first big difference, if we look at the macro structure of this thing, it's a holy mess, right? This is just chaos. I have 2 machines instead of 4, so I have the upper machine and the lower machine. And if you look at the design I made in my previous video in terms of macro structure, I have a screenshot right here, you can see that it's a lot more linear, it's a lot more organized. You know, you start out big with all the inputs and then gradually the machine slims down. You can deduct this simply from the layout that you see. So it slims down so that in the end, from all the inputs on the left, you get one input on the right. And if you compare that to this machine, you will see that it's utter chaos, right? We will dive into the specifics in a moment, but just from this overview, you can see that, you know, it's radically different than what I had before. Now, in this layout, I also need to say that I am only able to hook up two machines this close to the hub, whereas in my previous machine I would have been able to hook up 4 machines to the hub. With this one it can only be 2. If I wanted more than 2, I would need to build that further away from the hub, and that means that since my belts output little over 20 items per second, that this machine can only go as far as 40 items per second in terms of what the hub requires. However, the purpose is set in advance, and my purpose is that I want to go from level 27 to level 127 as quickly as possible, and 40 items per second will let me do that. So these two machines are sufficient to reach that goal, but we won't be able to level up very much beyond that because the limit is 40 items per second, right? So let's look at the structure. Because I used the quad painter, I have a radically asymmetric approach. Right, and here is the way it works. So the center of this machine is located here. Here is where there are 4 quad painters, or rather yet 4 pairs of quad painters, 8 in total. Excuse me. And then the color is fed from the right. Right, so I have 16 incoming belts that will smart mix the color and output a total of 16 conveyor belts to my quad painters. So that's on the right. And then on the left, I purely do gray shapes. So initially I have 16 incoming lines, 16 incoming sources. They're gonna cut the shape up, provide the right quadrant, and then contrary to what I did before, I'm going to stack these here to create 4 full layers first before they get painted by the quad painter. And then in a final step, This is the final step, so the painter then feeds into the stacker, and this stacker, which is different than this stacker. I used two different stacker designs. This last stacker is going to stack the layers. You know, a potential total of 4 layers. It's going to stack that to the final shape, and then it's going to output that to the hub. And these machines are identical. They are identical copies of one another. They do the exact same thing. So let's look at the colors. If you looked at my previous video where I talked about the smart color mixing system that was suggested to me by Zachary Smith with the cascading bit, I just copied that from my previous machine. I just laid it out a bit differently, but the principle with the smart color mixer feeding into this cascading storage array right here, that's exactly the same setup. So if you want to get an explanation about how that works, I suggest you watch my previous video, because I explained in detail how it works there, and in that sense I'm not going to explain it again. Right, so I have 16 of these storage arrays, 4 here, 8 here, and then another 4 right here, and they just feed into the quad painters. Now, as you can see, I also make use of the storage trick, and if you don't know that, is it a glitch? Is it cheating? Well, it's not really cheating if this is a mechanic that you can exploit within the game, right? But what it does is that when you have a shape or you know, any unit coming into the storage, it will immediately skip these 2 belt parts and immediately output on the other side. So if you chain that up, you're going to be able to you know, basically transport or teleport almost shapes from one side to the other. Now, this is a bit glitchy because it affects the precision of other machines in your factory. So it is advised to use this with caution. However, I decided to use it, and I have no problems. In the end, I have a machine that is faster than what would otherwise be the case. Now, in case you're wondering why some of these storages are not here, for example, on this piece of belt, this has to do with the wiring, because your storage also has you know, connections on the wiring layer, and in all those places where I didn't build these storages, it usually has to do with the wiring, right? So that's the color. That's the simplest part to explain, because as I said, I did the explaining in my previous video. So go watch that if you're curious to find how it works. I won't explain it any further here. So that's the color part done. Now, the shape part. The shape part is vastly different from what I had before. I start off very similarly to before, so analogously to the color system, also here I have a shape system I used Omni shapes again. I cut them up so that each cutter provides a fourth of a belt's worth of shapes, which in the end amount to a full belt. And then again we have this cascading mechanism that feeds into these filters and into these storages, and then we have that connected to filters, so that as soon as the signal changes, as soon as we need a new shape, a full belt of the requested quadrant can start outputting immediately. Now then, here is where it gets different. Now, this is pure and utter chaos, and if you're not if you're claustrophobic in nature, then I think this machine is not for you. But what I basically did was I took the design of my previous machine, and then like a foil of aluminium, I just knitted it into a ball, basically, into this puddle of a machine, into this condensed hot mess of a machine, where I tried to finagle these belts all across each other as to provide a total of 8 stackers with the necessary shapes and lanes and belts. And this also uses the pressure distribution system that I also extensively talked about in my previous machine. So the goal is to distribute your shapes in the beginning as much as possible. So every possible route that these shapes can take will move through exactly 3 splitters, and then each lane will run into exactly one stacker. Right, so maybe let's copy paste this for a bit. Let's have a look at this. Right, so this hot mess is the stacker, and you can take a still shot if you want, a screenshot or something, or simply pause the video to analyze this in detail. So this is just an unorganized mess, but basically what it comes down to is that this has the shape of a U, kind of. I don't know if you'll be able to tell. Maybe I'll put some indications on the screen. And I have that twice. So I have 2 U shapes, right? And the rest of it is just belts moving through that I try to design as efficiently as possible, right? So that's the primary setup. Right, so then what do we have? This first machine is going to create the left half of a layer. All right, it has these 2 machines feeding this, and then the other 2 quadrants are going to be stacked here. They are going to create the right half of the layer, and then I move this through. You can see it's tunneled below the other machine to the third and final machine, which is then going to merge both sides to create a full layer. And also this machine is able to work with any amount of quadrants on the layer. So if you have 1 quadrant, 2 quadrants, 3 or 4, this machine will be able to handle it, because again, I worked with a bypass filter. For example, if we don't have any shapes coming in on this lane, then this filter will automatically start outputting on the bypass lane, and it will continue on, and it will ultimately become the bottom input of this machine. And again, I tried to work with a system that would guarantee, in as many cases as possible, that the filter that is connected to the stacker, that is the line that will always be incoming first, so that when we have a change of shape, this queue can be cleared completely. Whereas in the other case, if this is the machine that's ready first, you will have a little queue here, but you have to multiply that by 8, because that's the amount of stackers we have, and you're gonna have to produce these shapes and run these through the stacker. You cannot dispose of them immediately. Whereas if you run, if you make sure that this line is the one that's ready first, then if you have a change of shape, all these shapes can be trashed immediately, and you have no queue left that you have to get rid of. Right? So that's the idea. The thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to hook up the signal here so we can see the machine running in real time. All right. So as soon as we get a full layer, and as you can see, we have 4 of these triplets of stackers, so 12 stacking arrays in total, which will be able to produce a 4 full belts, 1 for each layer, and then each layer feeds into the quad painter, and then finally each quad painter feeds into my final stacker. And this stacker is also radically different from any design I have made before, and it's what I call a quad stacker array, because it is capable of taking 4 inputs and producing 1 output. So it's 3 stacking modules in one, basically, to create a 4-layer shape in one module. And the way it works is this. Let's simplify this for a bit, okay? So here's my stacker. Right, the idea is roughly this. There we go. And then some filters. And finally some belt readers. Okay, there we go. So the idea is this. Imagine you have one belt coming in here. This filter is going to determine whether the shape coming in needs to go into the stacker or move on to the bypass lane and move into the next level, right? And it's going to repeat that. And this belt reader, if you look at the wiring layer, it has 2 outputs, one that reads the shape that moved across the belt last, and one to tell if you have movement on the belt. And if you do, then this will turn into a 1. Now, because these are immediately next to each other, they are in fact connected to each other as if you would have drawn a wire between them, right? So this signal, this 0 or 1, is going to immediately affect this filter. So what happens is, if you have an input coming from the on the rightmost lane, and you don't on the second to rightmost lane, then this output line will immediately be activated thanks to the filter. And this repeats, right? So this means that actually you can have this line missing, and you can have these 2 lines active, and you can still produce a 3-layered shape, right? However, it is very important, and let's get back to the machine. It is extremely important that you never get shapes queuing up on any lane that is not the rightmost lane. Because if you do, if you have a queue on this line, and this turns into a 0, then you will never be able to use this stacker anymore, right? So again, if you have a queue here, or here, or here, or whatever, if you have a queue on any of the lanes that is not the rightmost lane, then you will never be able to enable this stacker again, because once this machine falls to 0 and there are still shapes that are backed up over here, then this filter will automatically move these shapes into the bypass lane onto the next stacker, and your entire setup will collapse like a house of cards, right? So it is extremely important that you that in this setup you have the belts activating strictly from right to left, right? So I have 8 of these modules built in, and again, I used the storage trick in order to get these shapes to the final stackers quicker. But we have 8 in total, and I stacked them in pairs, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And in order to ensure what I said previously, that you only have that you always have the rightmost belt activating first before the other ones do, I have a filter system in place, to which we will get back when we're gonna have a look at the wiring layer. But I think all in all, this basically covers the physical layer. So again, macro structure. I have the color, smart color mixer and filter storages here. You know, I have them lined up in a U shape, and I feed them into the quad painters. And then incoming from the left, I have 16 shape inputs that, again, I cut up with these omni shapes. They run through a similar filter and filter cascading storage unit, whatnot, and then they feed into these machines. Also, the good thing of this setup is that this final machine doesn't have any wires on it, right? It runs fully without the wiring. If you disregard that, theoretically you have a wire running here, in theory, right? Okay, so that's that. Let's have a look at the wiring layer. Okay, so the wiring layer, again, is very similar for the color mixer bit. And again, since I explained this in my previous video, I won't talk about it in detail, but the gist of it is that you have 3 incoming lines of color, and through a complex setup in the wiring layer, it's going to open up a specific set of filters in order to run the correct paints through these color mixers, right? That's essentially what it is. And then again, you have the this color storage array. And I have to say, I cheated a little bit, the tiniest amount, because before, in my previous machine, if you work with the double painter, you only need half a belt's worth of dye input for a full belt of painted shapes of output. Working with the quad painter, that is not the case. So you actually need a full belt going out of these storages and out of the smart color mixers, excuse me, in order to keep these machines supplied. And while I explained that in my previous machine this was a fail-safe system because the storages would replenish, that was only the case because I was working with the double painters. Now that I'm working with the quad painters, that is no longer the case. And actually, these storages, over time, they will slowly but gradually deplete. So what I did, because my purpose is to do 100 levels, is I filled all my storages to the brim. They were all at 5K, and you can already see that while this machine has been running, we've lost, for example, 2,000 red units, right? So my hope is that by the time we reach level 127, none of these storages will be completely empty. Now, is it cheating? Maybe a bit, maybe not. I explained the way it works. I filled all my storages to the brim, just to give me that little extra head start. Now, if one of these storages should run dry, then it will take maybe 2 or 3, 5 seconds extra, because these machines all in all are all they're also pretty fast. So it would take me a few seconds extra for that particular round, right? From then on out, if we need that shape on that particular quadrant, we would need a few seconds extra. But all in all, we also know that the shapes are pretty random, so that the odds of that occurring is really small. Now, in theory, this machine would run dry eventually, right? So that's a little disclaimer. In the beginning, I wanted to create a machine that would work always under any circumstance. In theory, this machine doesn't really do that. It's more oriented towards practice and towards what we know will be coming, which is just the 100 levels up to level 127, and these storages will do, right? So I wanted to say that. Then another thing I wanted to talk about, which I came up with myself, and I'd like to credit myself on it because I think it's a pretty smart move, is I have, as you were able to tell, there are filters before all of the stackers in these units, right? Except for here. And what this does, the reason I did that is because when we have a change of shape, then all of the shapes incoming here will be output to this bypass lane. We have that repeating here. It will move here. Half of it will move into the next filter. Half of it will move into the next filter. And half of that will move into the quad painters. And the reason why I did that is because I want to use this surplus to already pull the erroneous paint through the machine. You just saw it happening. I don't know if you were paying proper attention, so let's wait for a next shape to see this in action. So as soon as we have a change of shape, we're likely also going to have a change of color, and we need to get rid of the paint that we won't need. So I'm using these superfluous shapes that are coming from my machine, this surplus, and I'm already feeding it into the quad painters as to get rid of the dye. Let's wait until the next level and see this in action. There we go. Well, now we have a lot of gray, so I can't really show it off. In case we do get gray, we can illustrate that right now. All of this is going to just oh no, sorry. In case we get an entirely gray shape, then this is going to jam, and it's going to trigger this overflow mechanism right here with the storages, and then the entirely gray shape will continue into the stacker. So let's maybe look at this one. Hopefully we get a better example here. There we go. So now we have this surplus coming in, and it's getting rid of the dyes, right? I didn't know if you saw it, and now we get the new shapes. We get the new shapes rolling. So that's how that works. It's making use of your trash here to also clear the trash here, right? So I thought that was a clever move, right? You may disagree, but I am proud of myself for that one. Right. So let's get back to the wiring. The wiring, as you may have guessed, also here is a pretty hot mess. In theory, it's not a hot mess, but in practice, it just looks like a complete, trash factory. It looks like crap. But either way, what we have is 4 incoming lines, right? So these lines are fed from these wires, right? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the bottom 2 Very similar to my previous machine, they're going to check firstly, do we need to use the bypass lane? That's this right here. So the first thing is just a trash filter right here. It's going to check, do we need to use the bypass lane? It's going to do that with an AND gate. So if any of these signals, oh, we don't need you, right? If any of these signals is missing, then this will produce a 0 and the shape will move on to the bypass lane, right? It will do that for both sides. Then we have the smart stacker again. So it has, it has both shapes coming in. And again, if one of these things is missing, let's see, where's my output lane? Here is my output lane. If any of these shapes is missing, then why is this not working? I think I may have. Yeah. I took out a belt part in the wrong place. So let's try it again. So if either of these is missing, right, then the other signal will become the signal that is output. So the other shape, the other quadrant, will be the signal that is output onto the next layer. Excuse me for that. Right, let's build our belt piece in again. And the same thing happens here, right? So if I take that out, then no, I took it out in the wrong place again. Let's see how all of this is connected. Right, so this should work. Yeah, so if I take it out here, then you will see this quadrant will be the signal that moves onto the next step. And then just simply the incoming wire is connected to all the filters, so that again, very similar to my previous machine, the erroneous shapes can be trashed as quickly and efficiently as possible, clearing the machine. Now, because I took out the wires, this machine has not cleared itself, obviously, but right, that's the way it works. So again, this is for the left lane. I have the left half of the shape of the layer, and then we have the rightmost signals, or these signals, coming in for the right half of the shape. These are here. The system is the same. I used another one of these systems that will output a 0 if you have a missing signal. Right, so now we should have 0 exactly. Right, so that the filters do trash these shapes, in fact, right? So we have that, and then those finally run into the final thing. Same principle again. So that's how that works. I hope that's a bit clear. All right. So all in all, I think that is it. I think I explained everything about both the wiring layer and the physical layer. Except for these filters. I have these filters here. I spoke before about the importance of this machine because it's a very fragile machine, right? As you can see, I messed a bit with the wiring, and immediately I have a backup here. My previous machine was sturdier than this one. This is a bit more delicate, so you really have to set it up, and as soon as you tamper with, let's say, one piece of belt, then your entire machine can get clogged, which is what happened right here. Right, so this is a bit of a delicate machine. And I talked before about the importance of the order of belts. So in this case, the machine has to run, or the incoming belts will have to be from right to left, meaning that the top shape has to be incoming first, and then the second to top layer, then the third to top layer, and finally the bottom layer. Right? That's the order of operations. And in order to ensure that, because as I said before, as soon as something messes this up, your entire machine won't work anymore. It will collapse like a house of cards. So in order to try and ensure that, here's what the wiring layer looks like. So I took a split an unstacking split of the signal that comes from the hub. It comes from the top, right? And then this is the top layer. And the thing it is going to do, the top layer may always move through, right? So I have 3 filters, one for each lane except for the first lane. The first lane has no filter. And then I have 3 belt readers, one for every lane except for the last lane, because it doesn't need one, right? So the belt reader of the first section of the rightmost lane is going to check whether the shapes moving through match the top layer, right? And if this signal is a 1, then the filter of the second lane will open up. So it means that only if we have a match on the first lane, then the shapes of the second lane will be able to move through. It doesn't really matter if the shapes on the second lane are the correct shapes yet. They can move through because they will be processed pretty efficiently, because also here I worked with a system that is going to distribute these shapes as good as possible, right? So it's going to distribute 1/8 of a belt's worth to 1 of 8 stackers in total, right? So that's why I decided to not add a check that only lets these shapes pass if they are the correct shapes for the second lane. So this depends on the first lane. If the shape of the first lane is correct, then whatever there is on this belt right here will be able to continue. And I repeated that. So this is the belt reader for the second lane, right? And again, we're going to match the signal with what we need, what we require on the second layer from the top. If that's a 1, then the filter of the third lane will open up. And then here, the same thing happens, but here I took my signal from the other side because I felt that was easier. So this is the bottom layer, and again, if this is the second layer from the bottom, and if that matches, if that matches this belt reader, then we're going to get a 1, and the filter here is going to open up, and only if this ensures the right order of operations in my experience, right? So we have meanwhile gotten at level 57. I think I've rambled on for long enough, and now I'm going to attempt the same thing I attempted before, which is quit this game right here, restart it, reduce all the settings. We are at an FPS of 24 frames per second at the moment, so I'm going to try to bump it up as much as possible, and then we're going to do a new attempt with the proper recording, with the timer, and then we're going to calculate on average how long it took to clear 100 levels. Alright, see you in a bit. Hey, hi, back again with a bit of a fun story to tell you. Between recording this new part of the video and the part you just saw, actually a few days have gone by, and the reason is because my machine, the one I just showed you, it failed the test. Here's what happened. Right after I recorded the previous portion, like I said I would do, I restarted the game, took down all the performance settings, hooked up the wiring, started the timer, and let the game run. I successfully watched the game complete a few levels, and then I decided to leave to take care of some business, and when I came back, the game had progressed to level 94, I believe, but I noticed that my traffic light displays on the bottom, these ones right here, they were twitching yellow, green, yellow, green, yellow, green. And that meant that at least one of my stacking machines had come to a complete standstill. Now, I did thoroughly test my machines and they always worked, but I think that the tick rate being at 30 Hz rather than 60, maybe in combination with added imprecision of the storage booster trick I explained, that the machine was not operating in exactly the same fashion as it had done before. I think what happened was this. So this was what it looked like, right? And I think maybe what happened was that at some point, maybe on let's say for example this second lane right here, a shape might have moved through. It became a 1, then it became a 0 again, and by the time that became 0, another shape right here was already on the bypass lane, and this fell to a 0 before the shape moved through or something. I don't really know what happened. I wasn't there to witness it, but either way, I played around with it for a bit more, and then decided that, you know, if this does come down to the tick rate you're using, maybe a frame drop was at the cause. I don't really know, but I decided that this machine was too delicate, it was too unreliable for my purposes. I didn't feel comfortable with this machine anymore. I decided to get rid of it and try something new. Right, so the machine is still the same for the biggest part, so the shapes from the left, the colors from the right, and the quad painters in the middle, and I just replaced the final section, the final stacking section, and I built roughly the same model, except now instead of working with filters for the bypass lane, I decided to work with storages for the bypass lane. Storages they seem to be a lot more reliable because they don't require this filter mechanism with a wire, and they don't require the belt reader part. So, as probably most of you are aware, but I'll repeat it anyway for those who don't know, storages have a priority output. If possible, the storage will always output from on the left side, the side that's marked in green and with a star right here, and only if it can't output right here because the flow is jammed, it will take the secondary output on the right. And this way, I try to ensure that, if possible, the shape will move into the stacker, and if it's not possible, then it will move on to the bypass lane. And the reason that works is because I am using the pressure distribution thing, where each of the stacking modules, so each of the triplets of stackers, gets 1/8 of the input, and because the input is distributed equally, this machine, as long as there is input on this belt, this machine will never use the secondary output lane. Only if this belt is missing, then this output will be used and it will move into the next stacker, and this system actually seems to be a lot more reliable, right? I also changed the filters at the bottom a bit in terms of wiring and how they act. So the principle is still the same. The top layer is checked for correctness, and the top layer will actuate the filter on the second lane, right? The second lane will be checked for correctness, and it will actuate the third filter, and the third layer will actuate or will control the fourth lane, right? So that is still the same, but the big difference is that my overflow used to have it used to have a trash bin right here, and instead of using trash bins right now, I rerouted it to the previous to the preceding lane. I'm sorry, to the preceding lane. So if this shape doesn't match anymore, which will be the case if we have a change of shape, then these shapes will get rerouted onto the third lane, and we get a bit of a traffic jam where we now have two shapes or two lines merging into one, creating a bit of a bottleneck, right? And to get rid of the queue, to make sure that we don't get a queue in the storage, I had trash filters here, right? So that we get a full belt that is supplied by both the lane coming from the bottom and the one from the right. And what that is going to do is it's going to make this machine a bit of a self-cleansing machine. It will flush itself that way. Because imagine we have a change of shape. You see these green shapes right here? They are queued up a bit, right? And what will happen as soon as we get a change of shape, these shapes will move onto this lane, these shapes will move onto this lane, and these shapes will move onto this lane. And the machine cleans itself. It clears this queue. And as soon as the queue is gone, then the overflow mechanism of the storages will actually, it will spring into action. So let me use a different shape right now. Let's just take the, sorry about that. Let's take let's just say the blueprint shape and then copy it on top of itself or something, so that we get a shape with 4 layers, right? So let's take that and see what happens. And a bit of a frame drop right there, right? So the machines, this layer is now redirected here, and the queue is actually cleared, right? And a bit after that, we get the correct shape slowly taking form and outputting the correct shape, right? And now we don't have twitches anymore. And this machine, this mechanism is a lot more stable than what it was before, right? So I hope this time around we actually will manage this, right? So now I will do the same thing again. I will restart the game. I will take down all the performance settings, and hopefully this time around we will have a successful run with a machine with the quad painter that is actually quicker than my previous version. So yeah, we needed to include this part, and now we're gonna have the final test. See you in a bit. Third time's a charm. If you've seen my previous videos, you'll know that what I'm doing now is preemptively starting the timer and waiting for it to hit exactly 1 minute, at which time I'll build in the missing piece of wire that connects the entire machine to the hub, and at the end, the extra minute will be taken off the final tally and we'll get a pretty accurate result. Alright? Still a few seconds more. And that's 1 minute. The wire piece is built in, the machines are running, and all we have to do now is wait and see how long it takes to get to level 127. Enjoy! Rightio, 99 levels later, and I'm getting ready to click pause on the timer. And boop! We're clocking in at 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 30 seconds. And I can already tell that this machine is faster than my previous one, where we came in at around 1 hour 14. Now, deducting the 1 minute from our final time, we get 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 30 seconds. And dividing that by 100, we get 38.7 seconds, which will round up to 39. Since the last machine did 45 seconds per level on average, it means that this machine is another 6 seconds faster per level on average. Now, where I'm from, we call that victory. Now, out of curiosity, I also wanted to check how my storages are doing, and you know what? This actually doesn't look too bad at first glance. Yeah, looking good. I'm actually a bit surprised by this. I would have predicted that the storages would have depleted a lot more during this run, but it seems they haven't. So this system, even though I can't really explain why yet, works a lot better than I thought it would. Now, 39 seconds on average per level is not only quicker than my previous machine, but it also proves that the quad painter is definitely a suitable contender, and if you, like me before, discarded the quad painter because supposedly it's inefficient compared to the other painters, well, maybe this video could cause you to reconsider. Who knows? Now, as I said, I don't know yet whether I'll be doing another Shapes.io video, but as we've heard me say that line before, I guess we'll see. Time will tell, alright? Either way, I hope you had fun watching, and I wish you all a lovely day. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.